Hey card making friends, Sandy here. Welcome back to my channel. I got something really groovy for you today. Vintage Woodstock poster card. And I used a ton of the Simon Says Stamps Positively Saturated inks for today. Starting with honey, zest, cantaloupe, grapefruit, mandarin, cherry, watermelon, taffy, iris, violet, heather, marine, seafoam, dew, and mist. And I used the smaller of the blending brushes, which gave me a nice uneven finish that ended up looking like suede. The dye I used is the Ocean Horizon from the latest release, and then the little bird is cut from the Birdies. I had to manufacture the guitar neck, and I'm going to show you in this video how I did that. Okay, so we are starting off with the Ocean Horizon die. It's cut out of hammermill white cardstock, and you're going to use something pokey to push through all the pieces and lay them out on your work table. And as you can see, I have some of them ink blended already, just because I didn't want this video to be 2 hours long. And you want to make sure that you keep them in order. It's a lot easier to put them back together. So I'm just going to show you my ink blending technique for these last 4 colors, and I've gotten all the way to marine. So marine's the next color I'm going to use, and I'm working on a glass work surface. I've also got my rag off to the left-hand side there. I use a lot of my brushes for 2 different colors, so I like to clean them off at the beginning before I start, especially if I'm working with a lighter color. So I'm just kind of slapping this color on there. I'm not worrying about too much, trying to get it exactly even. And I found out after I did the first card that having it not even actually gives it a very, very nice suede look effect once it dries. Okay, I'm just going to speed this up while I work through these last 4 colors. I'm just finishing up with the marine, and I'm using my rag to hold on to the other end, because sometimes if the ink is really, really wet, you end up leaving fingerprints in it. And you want to make it a little bit darker than what you want finished, because these inks do lighten up a little bit as they dry off. And so next I'm working on seafoam, which is much lighter, but I think this, I just re-inked this ink pad, so the ink is going on there a lot faster. So make sure your ink pads are nice and juicy. It will make much less work for you. And then I'm working on the final 2 colors, dew and mist. My ink blending is all finished and dried, so now it's time to glue it down to a card piece, and I'm using the new craft glue from Simon Says Stamps. I really like it. It comes in 2 sizes, and I like the small size because it's super easy to hold on to, and it's really, really easy to squeeze. So if you've got arthritis in your hands, this is the glue bottle for you. Plus it's awesome glue. So I've sped this up a little bit, obviously, and I am just working using my tweezers, reverse tweezers, starting at the top of a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 piece of white hammermill cardstock. And it's going to be too big when we're finished. We'll have to trim it down, but it's the perfect size for gluing these down. And so you want to start at the top and glue each piece. Make sure you get it in there nice and tight so you don't have any seams showing. Okay, and you're just going to work your way through all of this down to the end, and I'm going to super speed this. Of course, you can pick whatever colors you want to use on your card. I kind of went with the packaging and then went through all of my ink pads and just kind of fussed around a little bit until I was happy with the way the colors were shading. And so I have them listed. Underneath this video, there is a listing of a lot of the supplies. It wasn't long, it didn't allow for all of them to be recorded, so there is a link over to my blog where there's a complete list of all the colors and everything that I've used today. Okay, so we're about halfway through. We're just getting down to the purples, and once you get to that dark pink, instead of getting lighter, it starts darker and then goes lighter. So you start with a dark purple at this point, and then the medium purple, and then the light purple. And that's one of the really cool things I like about Simon's inks, is each shade comes in a light, medium, and a dark. And it makes it really, really easy to make cards like this and to do ink blending. Also, when you're stenciling things like flowers and leaves, to be able to have a light, medium, and a dark really adds a lot of depth without a lot of work. Okay, and here is my last piece. The pretty mist color. There we go, we're all done. And I stuck a couple acrylic handles on it just to keep it flat while it dried. Once it's dry, you want to trim this down, and I'm using my scissors on an angle working my way around this piece to cut off as much of the white as possible. Okay, and then we're going to add, you can see there's a great big huge roll of foam tape lying on the table. That's called a big mama foam tape from Simon Says Stamps. It's inexpensive and it lasts a really long time. And I want the depth, so I'm going to be putting the foam tape on the back of this panel. Okay, so I'm going to add foam strips to the back of this, and I'm using my Spellbinder scissors because this stuff is super, super sticky, and those Spellbinder scissors are non-stick, which is great. And then the easiest way to get the backing off of these things is to use your tweezers to pick up the corners. I have very, very soft fingernails, so it's really hard for me to get those off without using tweezers. Peel them all back, and then we're going to mount this to the front of the card. And it's a 4 1/4 by 11 score and fold at 5 1/2. Okay, so we're going to work on the guitar and the birds next. And I've got all my little pieces cut, and I'm pointing to the bird that I used. I cut 2 bodies, 1 wing, a beak, and an eyeball. Okay, and then I am going to set those aside for a minute because we're going to work on the guitar first. And I've got a bunch of little pieces here that you can see, and I got those from the Spellbinders North Pole Sentiments. Okay, this is a new one by Simon Hurley, and I use this die. This is the arms for the snowman, and this guy here, this is the cheeks and the nose for the snowman. So the cheeks work really good for the tuners, and then you just cut the ends off. So you need 3 sets of those die cut, and you need 2 sets of the arms, and we really only need 3 arms, but it's hard to cut just 3. And so what you're going to do is get all these little pieces, get them all organized. The top of the tuners are up on the left-hand side, and I'm just going to show you how I cut the little fingers and then the round ball off of this arm. Okay, and then what's remaining is I'm cutting in half. And you're going to do that until you get 6 little pieces. So you need 3 of the arms in order to create that. Okay. And I'm laying them on top of a piece of white cardstock just because it's a little bit easier to move them around, and they stay in place while we're trying to glue this together. This is kind of really intricate gluing, and tweezers are a good thing, as well as your embellishment wand, because it's really good at picking up those little ovals that we cut. Okay, so here's the super finicky part about making these little tuners. I line all of these up so they're all in a row, straight up and down. Okay, and then I'm going to lay one of the little cheeks above each one of them. And then I'm going to take my little glue bottle, and I am going to glue each of these together. So your tweezers and your embellishment wand are going to come in really handy here, and this little tiny bottle of glue. So I'm working 3 at a time, and I'm going to put a little dab of glue on the end of each one of these little guys. And then I'm going to use my embellishment wand, and I'm going to pick up that little oval and put it on the very top. So this part's kind of easy. It's when we line them all up to put them on the end of the guitar that it gets a little crazy. Okay, easier said than done. See, you get a little finicky and you're trying to straighten it out, and it just all kind of moves away from you. So it's fun to use the little bit of the white glue because it gives you an opportunity to straighten out these little guys before they set. Okay, and here's the second set. And again, embellishment wand to hold it in place. And I use my tweezers to straighten it out a little bit. And this one doesn't want to play nice, so I'm going to tear it apart and try and straighten it out. They are very finicky. I will not lie. Okay. And that one's crooked too, so let's just, and it's got a big gob of glue on it. So fixing both of those. Okay, so now we are ready to start making the main part of the guitar. In the original poster, the guitar is blue and green, so I have cut those, and it's about 1/4 inch for the blue piece, and then it's about, 5/8 for the green. You just kind of have to eyeball it. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to snip off the corners of the end of the blue piece so that it ends up looking like this, okay? And then we're going to take the green piece, And we're going to cut about 1/2 inch. I'm just measuring it against the other card that's finished. Okay, so I'm angling the cut. Sorry, I got it kind of out of the frame. Just angling the end of it a little bit, and I didn't get the bottom quite right, so I'm going to snippet that again. Hopefully in frame this time. And you just kind of want to turn your paper while you're cutting to get a nice little curve going in the end. And that's the very, very end of the guitar. And so at the other end, we are also going to snip off the corners. Just like that. Okay, and I'm going to just even this out just a little bit. And so you got a piece that looks like this. So the next up, you want to grab your really, really skinny red line tape, and I'm putting a little piece of it on the blue side and then leaving a tail, okay? Laying it down on my work surface, and I'm going to push the two together and then use the red line tape to hold it in place. Okay, I'm not really happy with that, but we're going to move on. I still don't like this end, so I'm attempting again to get a nice even curve going on it. Okay, so here's the worst part of the whole card. You got to line up these 3 little guys, and we're only going to do one side at a time because this is crazy trying to do 2. You got to line them up so they're really, really close together and they're even, and then you have to add a little bit of glue to the bottom of each one of those tuners, and then we're going to lay the end of the guitar over top of it. I found this was the easiest way. If you want to glue them on one by one with tweezers, that works too. Maybe faster than it was for me for this video. Trying to get them all straight and lined up is kind of hard. But that's what tweezers are for. Okay, so get them just right. And you can fuss with this all day. You truly can. I've got a piece of glue in there that is messing with things. Okay, then you're going to pick up your guitar and you're going to pop that green piece right over top and then push down. And you're going to pick it up, and there's your first 3 tuners. If my camera will focus. There we go. Okay, now we're going to repeat this on the other side. Next up, we have to make our little bird. So here is my guitar all finished. Okay, we're going to set that aside. We're going to add some foam squares to it in a little bit. And I'm going to start with the bird body. And I'm just checking to make sure that one of them isn't dirty. Okay, I'm gluing the 2 parts together. And then I'm going to grab the wing, put a little bit of glue on the back of it, add it to the body of the bird. Kind of hard to see, I know, because it's all white on white. And then I'm going to use the medium-sized beak, and I like to place it down on my table, add the glue, and then put my bird on top. And then the final step is there is a little eyeball, little black one. I'm just going to put a little dab of glue and add the eye. Finally, we have his little legs cut, so I'm just going to hold them with my finger from my left hand, add a little bit of glue to the top, and again pop the body of the bird down over top. And then we should be able to pick this little guy up, and we're off to the races. So we're going to add some foam squares to the back of the both of these, and I'm just measuring where I want to cut this off. Just kind of right about there. Okay, and cut yours straighter than I cut mine. I think we're going to need a wee bit of another snip because it's not quite straight. There we go. Okay, so I'm using the Simon Says foam squares. I like to cut these in half because they go farther and because I'm cheap. And also because they fit into the smaller spaces. And today we need this for the back of the guitar. So you're just going to add enough along there so that it keeps it popped up on the front of your card. And then you need to add the same amount for the bird because we also want him popped up so he looks a little bit 3D. and then we will glue his toes down onto the guitar at the very end. I just had some glue on my table there that I had to get rid of. Okay, so remove the protective covers or the release paper from the back of your foam, and then choose where you want to add this. I kind of go right over top of the bottom of that turquoise, the fuchsia and the purple. You don't want to go farther down than that because your guitar won't show up on top of the lighter blue at the bottom. So stay into those richer jewel tones. Okay, and release paper off the back of the bird, and I like to use my tweezers to do my positioning, and I want him just kind of standing on the very top of the guitar, and then I'm going to add a little bit of glue to his toes. Okay, so I'm using my tweezers just to lift up his little toes, putting a little bit of glue down there, and I got a bubble in the glue. So you'll see me trying to wipe it up. I glued my little toes down, and then I'm going to take my tweezers and just get in behind there and dig out that little bit of glue. And there we go. We're finished with our little card. Aren't they cute? And they're reasonably easy to make. So for the bird pieces, from the Birdies die set, I used this piece for his feet. That's his body. That's his wings. Those are his eyeballs. And then this die here does all three of the beaks for all of the birds. And that's it. That is my little birdie card for Woodstock. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please consider giving me a thumbs up and sharing it with your friends. And everything that I've used today is listed down underneath this video. There's also a link over to my blog where there's a detailed list with thumbnail pictures. Unfortunately, at the time of this taping, the Ocean Horizon die was not available at Simon Says Stamps, but you can click on the button to be notified when it comes back into stock. So thanks again, and until next time, toodles!